What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Maria Marino, excited to be back with our Action Network writer, Jim Turvey, for our Best Bets episode, Friday, August 23rd. We have a 4-game slate on Ion, and a quick programming note before I welcome in Jim, because I don't want to forget to let everybody know we're going to be back again Wednesday next week, not Tuesday, Wednesday, because Tuesday, the W only has 1 game. There's a whole bunch of games on Wednesday, so we want to get you as much action as we possibly can. But Jim, hello, and why don't you give us a couple of your best bets for Friday?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's really, I'll lead by saying it's just so nice to have the WNBA back. There's stuff to do in the evenings. The Olympics were fun, but they would kind of fill the day, and then the nights were quiet. Now we got WNBA back. So my 2 best bets for the day, I'm going with a couple of player props. I'm going to go with Alicia Gray under 4.5 rebounds. That's juiced, but I will take the juice. And Brittany Sykes over 4.5 assists. You should be able to get that at a plus number.
Wow, a couple of player props right off the top. I love it. We are going to get into each and every game, though, and obviously talk more about each of these matchups and why you like these bets as we go. Let's go ahead and start with the Mercury at Dream, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Phoenix favored by 2.5. This is a very juicy matchup, in my opinion, Jim, because on Wednesday, Atlanta won their 3rd straight game. They beat Phoenix 72-63. Tina Charles, shout out, 2nd on the all-time scoring list now. She had 12 points, 17 rebounds. Wild. Atlanta, it's what we feared. We liked them to miss the playoffs going into the season, but they get Ryan Howard back healthy. They have Jordan Canada now. They have covered 5 of their last 6 games, and the one that they didn't cover was a push. So they are right on that playoff bubble. And the question is, can the Mercury bounce back here? And on a side note, I do want to ask you as well just about the total, because it was obviously quite a low scoring affair the other night.
Yeah, this is a really interesting game. You mentioned that this was a rematch. You mentioned that the Dream won, and now we see the Mercury favored again. If you're a longtime listener, and by long time, I'm going to pause here and say long time actually could even just be the most recent episode. I literally said I will never bet on the Dream. I've long been, the Dream have burned me many, many times. I'm starting to reach towards the stovetop again because they look really good. The defense looks like it's there. Jordan Canada looks like she is such a difference maker to opening up that offense a little bit. I'm pretty intrigued by the Dream. There was a number out in the market before their last game at plus 300 to make the playoffs. That number is no longer there. It was a very interesting number, especially because the Sky right now without Mabry look like maybe they're going to slip a little bit. So that
Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. I already got crucified by Matt Mitchell in our Action Slack for bringing up that possibility. So
it looks like it's a very distinct possibility. I will say with the Dream, every time we think they draw us back in, they burn us. So now that I'm actually interested in playing them, I'm sure that they will somehow burn us. But it's definitely the side I want to be on. But again, because I've been burned enough by them, I'm going to make the money line for Atlanta a lean, but my 2 best bets will be player props. I mentioned under my favorite best bet, Alicia Gray under 4.5 rebounds. This number is stuck on a full season line. If you look at her more recent games, she hasn't even really come close to this number, and they have a much more full roster now. She's hanging out around the perimeter much more. I like the under 4.5 here, even though it's juiced to about minus 150. I'd even take under 3.5 around that minus 110 number. The other player prop I really like, Ryan Howard. You mentioned Ryan Howard and how good she's been since the Olympics. She had 19 points against Phoenix on Wednesday, and now she gets another chance against a pretty bad defense that runs at a fast pace. I like the baseline of her over 16.5. I even like if that gets to 17.5. For her, 18 is a pretty key number because she's such a 3-point shooter. But I would even take the all at 20 plus points if you get a decent plus number as well. She came up just shy last game, but she had a ton of field goal attempts. So even if just a few more of those drop, we're looking at a 20, 22-point game from her. So I definitely lean to the dream side here, but been burned so many times by them. I'll make the best bets a couple of player props instead.
Okay, so you said Howard, you like up to over 17.5.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you said the 19 the other night. Her first game back from the break, she had 30.
Yeah.
Second game back, even though Atlanta beat Connecticut, she only had 13, but we know Connecticut's a real pain in the ass on the defensive end.
Yeah, that game was a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, exactly. And then Gray had the 3 rebounds the other night against Phoenix, and you like that under 4.5. And I just have to say, like, with a total, I'm seeing it around 163.5. Any thoughts on that at all?
I'm with you that, the game on Wednesday was definitely very low scoring, but Phoenix plays at such a fast pace. I do get a little bit nervous at a game total in the low 160s. I'm probably going to let that one be for now, but maybe you want to do something like an alt under in case we do get the bad shooting again, or if it looks like Atlanta's defense really has come around, maybe you're looking at like a Phoenix team total under as well would be a way to play that.
I have to figure that Phoenix is going to do more. They just didn't have much going outside of Kalia Copper and Brittany Griner, and even those two were not very efficient.
Yeah.
So I do expect a better offensive performance, and we shall see. We shall see.
Are you joining me on leaning towards the dream as well?
Oh, I'm staying
too
the
terrifying.
hell away from this. I'm staying the hell away from
You're
like a
listening
side
to
here.
the last episode. I literally was like, I'm never going to bet them again, and now here I am, very interested. Again.
I know, but here's part of the problem. One, like it's always hard with these home and I guess these both were home
these duplex
for Atlanta,
they are really
but the
funky.
back-to-back sort of matchups. We're going to talk about another one here in a second, but like it's a little tricky with that where I'm just like, are they really going to beat them twice in a row? And then also, I do think there was a little juice in the last game just with knowing that Tina had that big milestone where it was like this like exciting moment. Even though she wasn't the leading scorer in the game, she was very much involved, and it was very much like a build up to her, passing that mark and moving to second all time on the scoring list. So I may consider coming around with you on some of the props, but definitely staying away from a side. Let's keep it moving. And I mentioned another rematch from a couple nights ago. This time it's a home and home situation. So you have the Aces at Lynx, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Lynx are favored by 1.5. The last time these two teams played, it was in Vegas, and the Lynx took care of business, 98-87. Super balanced scoring effort. Like all the starters were in double figures. Courtney Williams showed out, 22 points, very efficient, 10 of 16 from the field, 10 assists, 7 boards. Kelsey Plum admitted that she got cooked.
Yeah, that was a great
and,
quote.
And, I know you don't have official plays on this, but I do want to just talk about it real quick because I don't know if the Aces, if they're just fatigued. You and I have talked quite a bit about all the Olympians they have, the 6 that competed over in Paris. But 0-6 ATS in their last 6, 3-3 straight up. So just something to think about. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here.
It's so interesting because you can so easily craft two narratives right now, right? One is that they're going for their 3rd title in 3 years. They just sent all these Olympians over. they're not the youngest team ever. They are youthful, but they aren't like, 22, 23-year-olds.
Youthful. That's such a nice way to put it. Youthful.
They are
yeah.
youthful. But it could just be that they're getting worn down, and it could be that the league has improved, that this is their third year of kind of a similar scheme. People are starting to figure it out a little bit, and that this team just isn't quite at the level that the previous 2 years were at. The flip side of that is almost as compelling to me. It is that, and again, I know we don't love the cross to NBA comparisons constantly, but this is so prominent in my mind that all year I watched the Denver Nuggets try way too hard in the regular season. And I kept saying, you're trying to go back to back. Just save yourself for the playoffs. And then
save yourself.
Wait for playoffs, Denver. And they didn't, and they ran themselves ragged, and then they lost in the playoffs. A part of me is wondering if the Aces, if you watch their games, they look slow on rotations. Again, is that the third year of a really rough schedule of going back to back to back to back? Or is it that they're saving themselves for the postseason a little bit, and that they're going to be able to flip that switch when they get there? I think either way, the regular season Aces aren't the juggernauts that we have seen. I think that is a very safe thing to say. But from a futures perspective, I am very interested. Now, where this gets really interesting, though, is that if they don't flip that switch, and if they lose this game to the Lynx tonight, which the Lynx are favored, they will now be almost certainly locked into that 4 or 5 spot. It's going to be really hard for them to get out of the 4 or 5 spot, which means they're almost certainly going to be facing the Liberty in the second round. That is not the bracket layout they want to see. And to be honest, I don't think it's the bracket layout that you or I or the league wants to see. I think we kind of all want to see that finals rematch. Their path to getting to a championship is a lot harder if they have to play the Liberty in the semifinals and then, get worn down in a battle with them and then face a team like potentially the Minnesota Lynx. Shout out Michael Fiddle, he's all over their futures. I can't quite get there yet, but I mean, at this point, you have to be interested by what Minnesota has. They've added Maisha Hines-Allen. She's already looked like she's made a good impact for them. So for this game as a whole, again, I lean towards the Aces. And if anything, I lean towards the Aces kind of really getting right. You can do that like -7.5 alt line. The Lynx shot unbelievably well in their matchup on Wednesday, a number that they aren't going to be able to repeat. Except for the fact that, remember at the beginning of the season, the Lynx kind of did this because they took teams by surprise. They have a really good offensive scheme right now. They have players who can create good shots. They have players who can make open looks. I think they're like the team that constantly looks like, oh, they can't keep that up. But it might just be that their offensive scheme right now is good enough at creating these looks, especially against tired legs or against defenses that haven't quite seen this before. That's their edge. That's their thing. It's not actually as unsustainable as it looks. So add all that together, I'm staying away from this. There aren't even any player props that really scream my name even. So this to me, it was, I don't know if people watched, even though it ended up being almost a little bit of a blowout, incredibly fun game to watch. I think this will be an incredibly fun game to watch, in part because I think the Minnesota crowd knows how good it's starting to be. Like, this Lynx team could really contend for a championship. These are the defending champs. Let's really, that building's great always, but like, let's really go in. I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Look, of the teams not named New York, actually, I can't even necessarily include Vegas in the same like stratosphere as New York right now, just because we can't like ignore that.
Yeah.
They don't seem right. They don't seem like the best team in the league right now. But so I guess I would say, apart from New York, the Lynx are probably the next team that I feel good about that actually, could take this all the way. I think Connecticut and Seattle are intriguing, but I still need to see more. Need to see Mabry and Gabby Williams and their respective roles. But I mean, I guess I would still be pretty shocked if the Aces drop back to the Lynx. And like, that's the thing I can't wrap my head around. We keep being surprised.
Yeah.
We keep being surprised every time the Aces lose. Like, I mean, the Aces, they lost to, was it Atlanta? They lost to Chicago right before the Olympic break. And it's like, at some point, and I have to make the NBA comparison. You and I have talked about it, but like, last season, I was just hesitant all year long to believe in the Celtics. And I kept giving the Nuggets all the respect. And at some point, you just have to recognize, like, it's a different season.
Yep.
And so, anywho, just wanted to sort of get that off our chest, even though no official best bet, but definitely something that I think will have implications down the road. So, all right, we'll keep it moving to the rest of the slate. And your other best bet was in the Sparks Mystics matchup. So let's talk about that. Mystics favored by 5.5. Nice to see the Mystics as a favorite because they're taking on the Sparks. That one's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. And we can't talk Mystics without once again mentioning Mystics first half, just because this has been the wagon, as our colleague Andrew O'Connor Watts likes to call it. They are 19-8 ATS in the first half. So interestingly, they did not cover the first half of their last game.
It was so different than what we've seen from them.
They did flip the script, and I'm upset because on our last pod, I said that I leaned Seattle -6.5, ended up betting it -6.5. They won by 6. There were definitely some missed free throws at the end there, so that was a little bit of a bad beat for yours truly. But yeah, Washington ended up covering the full game. Ariel Atkins went off. Shakira Austin went off, 25 and 24 points respectively. Want to shout out Steph Dolson. She is
Big Mama
shooting the lights out from 3 this year, 51.3% from 3. I think she only had 1 the other night, but still, I felt like I have to give Big Mama Steph, a shout out. And then the Sparks, on the other hand, have covered in back-to-back games. Probably saw they lost to Connecticut by 8 in TD Garden, so that was a fun matchup. But why don't we talk about your Sykes bet, unless there was anything else you wanted to mention?
I'll touch on the side. So this opened at 3.5, Mystics -3.5. Grab that over at Bet She Wins. To me, that's implying that these two teams are in the same tier. They are very much not in the same tier with the Mystics as a healthy roster right now. Sykes is back. You mentioned Shakira Austin is back. This Mystics team, honestly, is like I think they're in like that dream and sky tier. I think they're a pretty good team. They're 0-3 since coming back from the Olympics. That's because they lost twice to the Lynx and once to the Storm. That's to be expected. Those are top tier teams. But this Mystics team's really fun, really spunky. You know, you mentioned their first halves. They've really been fading in fourth quarters, but we saw against this Storm opponent in their most recent game, they didn't fade down the stretch. And I think that's something that now that everyone's back. They were like kind of a ragtag collection there. I think that's why they were fading down those fourth quarters. I don't know if I would expect those fourth quarter fades to continue the rest of the season. But I do like Washington a lot here. I would even still take it at -5.5, just not to a level of a full best bet. My best bet would be Sykes. She came back. She's looking strong. If you look at her assists per minute, they're higher than last season. They're I think around a career average. She's really doing a lot in that playmaker role. She got to 5 last game. I like her to get to 5 again at plus money here for someone who's only kind of seeing their minutes, increase a little bit as she returns from injury. She missed a lot of time. The other thing about it, if you look at just her assists per game number, it's a little bit lower, but that's a little bit deflated because she left 2 games early with injury. So you see, if you go to her game log, she has a game where she played about 5 minutes, another where I think she played like 14 minutes, something like that. So those are kind of dragging down her season totals, whereas on a per minute basis, she's actually doing pretty well. So I like her to cover that assist number, and I don't hate looking at her points as well. Just in general, I think those lines for her are a little deflated based on those 2 games where she played only partial minutes.
All right, sounds good. So Brittany Sykes to dish over 4.5 assists. And yeah, I mean, it's such a shame that this team got in such a hole with their injuries. I hope we get to see an actual healthy Mystic squad next year, because the last 2 seasons, I feel like, last season they ended up making the postseason, which was nice, but still they were decimated by injuries. And so, but I do think I've said it and I'll keep saying it, like down the stretch, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be feisty. And especially against, the Sparks, it's like, this might just be the one that they say, F it, we'll just win. Like, you know what I mean? Although you've mentioned this a couple of times, like somebody's trying to get Paige Beckers. Yeah. So
and these are the
we'll
two
see what that
teams
effort looks like in the fourth quarter.
I think these are 2 teams that most are trying to get Paige Beckers, and she would fit so well on either team. The LA, I still can't shake the fit with LA. If you got her, Rakia, and Cam Brink, I mean, to me, that's like a borderline championship team
future.
in a few years.
It's like the future is here.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, something to think about. And one more game here on Friday night. It's the Sky visiting Connecticut. Sun favored by 9.5, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This is another, this is like get your popcorn out a little bit, in my opinion. Like, I'm just wondering, is this going to be a revenge game? And if so, who? Who's getting revenge, you know? Whose revenge game will this be? Like, to me, I think the Sky are extremely motivated because basically Marina Mabrey wanted out. I think she wanted to contend, and she was like a fan of the Sun. Like, she got what she wanted. The Sky, you know, they get some future assets, but they definitely sacrifice the present a little bit, I think, in potentially risking missing out on playoffs, especially the way that the Dream are playing, as you and I discussed. But that being said, you know, the Sky aren't rolling over either. And we know the Sun are a great defense. The other thing I wonder about the other night at TD Garden, so DeWanna Bonner came off the bench. I believe the first time since 2016 that happened. And then I read that she essentially volunteered and was like, I'll come off the bench, you know, I'll do whatever the team needs. And it's like, okay, but is that because that's the best rotation? Like, it seems like they're figuring it out. Now that they have this extra piece who's definitely a starting caliber player, it seems like they're just not 100% on that rotation yet. So I find that a little funny. Like, I don't know if that's the best move, to be honest, but
yeah,
we'll see if they go that route again.
So I don't have a best bet for this game. I have a couple of leans, and it's in part because Connecticut's rotation is all sorts of funky right now. I made a Dejanay Carrington points under, one of my best bets. The last time they played, I was like, it looks like maybe she's the one who's going to be losing minutes and usage. Cut to, like you said, Bonner volunteering to come off the bench. Just really strange. I'm curious to see what Steph White will do. I do. It's funny though. You said a revenge game, and for a minute my brain didn't go to Mabrey. What it went to was how Alyssa Thomas had that really hard foul on Angel Reese the first time these two met up. And I could see, you know, a little bit of Angel. You know, now I think Angel reads that stuff as like, you know, I'm being welcomed to the W. That's just kind of to be expected.
Sure.
But that was where my mind actually first went when you said that. So it's a funky game. My best lean, I think, is the Sky team total under. You know, Kenny Carter is really their entire offense right now, with Angel getting putbacks as kind of the secondary there. We've talked about how this Sun defense is incredible. If they can focus all their attention on, you know, cutting off Kennedy getting in the lane and cutting off Angel on the glass, that's going to spell really tough times on the offensive side for Chicago. So that would be my favorite, just not quite at the tier of the 2-player props I gave, but I think the team total under for Chicago is definitely a look.
Yes, indeed. So as mentioned in the last game, the Sun beat LA, no cover. They did lose to the Dream before that. Chicago is 1-2 against the spread since the break. Remember, the Sun won both prior meetings, though they are 1-1 against the spread. Not really putting much stock in that considering the Mabrey trade. But again, this is really a wait and see for me, just because I guess I want to find out if Mabrey, that addition, is as impactful as the Sun need it to be. And I'm not 100% sure yet. Like, I think there are signs, and I think theoretically their offense should be better. But because they're still kind of figuring it out, I really want to sit back and watch this team another game or two before I really feel confident betting them. So that's where we're at. Any final thoughts, Jim, before we wrap it up?
No, I think it's a really fun slate. That Minnesota Las Vegas game in particular, really going to be looking forward to watch. But there should be plenty of fireworks in Chicago, Connecticut as well. So yeah, just a fun slate. Excited to be in kind of, you know, the stretch run here where we're coming down to teams having, you know, 10, 12 games left. So this is the final push.
Crunch time. Player props from Jim. Gotta love it. Jim Turvey, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening to Buckets, presented by BetMGM. Once again, I'm your host, Maria Marino, and I will be back, TBD on who will be with me, but I will be back Wednesday with more best bets. Until then, let's get buckets.